Welcome to Class A People.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you for inviting
You're in
me.
the sticks now.
I know. Different compared to London, isn't it?
Yeah, very different. Okay, so we kind of met through TikTok. You're doing really well on there. Well done.
So are you.
Thank you. Someone said that to someone the other day and they were like, what's TikTok? I was like, no. So how I like to start things is usually with childhood, because I think it plays a big part in some of the stuff that we've been through. Not necessarily, but usually when I start doing that with people, then they realise halfway through, they're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
So just to kind of give an overview, you were in the army. How old were you when you went in?
I was 17.
So young.
Yeah. And, joining the army for me was a way of kind of trying to recreate myself already at the age of 17. Because, growing up, I was absolutely fine on the outside, but I was dying on the inside. And I just didn't know where my place was in life. I didn't know who I was when I was looking at myself in the mirror. And I thought joining the army, people ask me all the time, why did you join the army? And essentially for me, it was because I wanted to be someone, other than Scott, because I didn't know who Scott was. So the thought of putting on an army uniform, getting an army number, that was my identity. And it worked. It did. It definitely did work because, the army lifestyle, very regimented, suited me down to a T. The fitness aspect of things suited me down to a T. And yeah, I was very, very good at it. I enjoyed it.
Where do you think that sort of not knowing who you were came from at 17? I suppose not many of us really know who we are at 17, but kind of, was there aspects of your childhood that you can look back on now and think, like the ADHD and things like that?
Definitely. And, when I was going through childhood, you hear it all the time with people in recovery. I didn't really know, I knew I was different, but I just couldn't put my finger on it. And when you're trying to work something out like that at such a young age, it's mind-boggling.
But you don't really talk about it, do you?
You don't, and but I always remember telling myself, I'm not normal. Why am I not normal? I always used to say that to myself. And I then started establishing a eating disorder at the age of 6 years old.
Yeah, 6 is young.
6 is very young.
Is that bulimia then?
Bulimia then, yeah.
So that's been going on a long time.
A long time. And it was one of them things that, that was, identified by my mum and dad. But they, I hid it very well.
Yeah.
So already at that age, I was kind of hiding things, keeping things to myself, but then my mum would see, little bits in the toilet. She would see the patterns of me eating food and then bringing it up in my mouth,
Yeah, because you kind of get a gag reflex, don't you, after you've done it plenty of times.
Yeah, there's no sticking fingers down my throat with me. It just, I can control it.
So at 6, where have you even sort of picked up on doing something like that?
I wish I could tell you. I really don't know. And the only reason I knew that it was 6, because when I went into rehab last year, I walked in those doors and I knew, because it was just off the back of a relapse when I got sent back to prison the second time. And I knew that I had to leave no stone unturned. And that was the first time I kind of said out loud, I have bulimia, I have an eating disorder.
Have you ever met another guy who's talked to you, or, if you've ever been on a session, have you ever been open about that?
I haven't, no. But what I have done in the past, when I look back now, I used it as a little party trick. And it used to be the funny thing, the disgusting thing, but also funny. I would eat something and then I would bring it back up.
Yeah, you'd be able to do that.
And it was just, a superpower. I'd look at it as, I can do that. Why can I do that? And it was the fact of, when I dissect it now, it was the fact of being able to be in control of what I can keep down and what I can't, what I don't need to.
Was it, because I've spoken to other people who have, I've spoken to someone who's had anorexia and also bulimia in their story, but both female. And interestingly, they both say that it's not the food thing. It's feeling full.
Big
time. Feeling of like, I'm full. Oh. And a lot of the time it's because we've done binge eating.
Yeah.
So it's that excessive,
Oh.
like, you know, again, black and white thinking, addict behaviour,
Yeah.
of kind of like, I've probably not eaten something for ages and ages and ages, or I've restricted myself.
Yeah.
So now I'm starving, so I'm going to binge, and then I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to throw up.
Big time. And when you kind of compare the two, eating disorder, bulimia and addiction, there's a lot of relatable things with both of them, you know. It's the planning, you know, planning for a use up. Also planning that you're going to have a binge now.
Yeah.
Go to the shop, you get loads of sweets, crisps, knowing that once you eat this stuff, it's going to be back down the toilet.
And it eradicates the guilt, right? Because you go to the shop, you get all of the stuff, you know you're going to satisfy that craving.
Yeah.
But you also know that you're not going to have to feel guilty about it because it's all going to come back out anyway.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I ever had bulimia, but I definitely, towards the end of my using, when my binge eating was out of control, I actually found a note on my notes field the other day when I was having therapy back then. She said to me, you need to write down like how much you're eating. I've looked back on it and it is insane. But that was because I could never fill the void. Like, your brain is so powerful.
Yeah.
My stomach technically shouldn't have been able to take in all of that food. But because I was trying to fill an emotional void, the stuff that I could eat in a day.
Oh, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Because I'm on a come down and I need something that's going to fill.
To change the way we feel.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And, you know, like I said, with addiction as well, taking that drink, taking that drug, it's not essentially the drink and drug, it's the feeling that it gives us to changing the way we feel.
So true. It's like, do you feel that it's quite a common thing with men that's just not spoken about?
I do think it is.
Because I know you're really into your fitness, and kind of that plays a big part in image. And I think that the male kind of, there's a slight toxicity to working out and that being healthy.
100%. And, you know, I'm no expert, but I've been someone that's always been into the gym. And I think a lot of gym goers suffer with body dysmorphia. Yeah. And the reason I say that is because every person you speak to that goes to the gym, they're never really happy.
No.
They're always going there to get to that next, lose that extra bit of weight, you know, gain that little bit of muscle. They're never just content with how, you know, and the bigger you get, if you're weight training, the smaller you feel. It's true, because, you know, you're always wanting that little bit extra. And no matter how many people say to you, "Cool, you've put on some size," or "You've lost some weight," the most important opinion is our own. If we look in that mirror and we don't agree with that, that's it. Everyone else, those 100 comments that you've just received, is pointless.
Yeah, it's
you know?
so true that. And actually sometimes it's this sort of toxic nature of the gym where people a lot of people go from being addicts to obsessed with the gym. But is it not just cross-addicting from one into the other? And in a dangerous way, because it's the same with eating. I think we can glamorise it by saying, oh, I eat a healthy diet, but you're still obsessive with the way you're eating.
Oh, definitely.
You're obsessive with it.
Yeah, and that is exactly, you're spot on. You know, the gym, I've said it in a few of my content videos, there is a fine line.
Classic.
Yeah.
No one else.
I don't know no other way to say it. But there is a fine one where, you know, gym is very healthy and good for your mental health. But if you cross that, it then can become detrimental. It become unmanageable, like any drink or drug can.
Yeah, because then you find I've spoken to people before who, you know, maybe you'll have plans to go out for dinner and they'll go, I need to go to the gym first. It's like, well, that's taken over your life now.
Yeah.
Because you're choosing, again, like drinking drugs, you're choosing to do that over maybe something that's just good and pleasurable, like going out, that routine and regimented thing.
And it's not just that, it's, you know, it's then going out for something to eat, the guilt, I've ate something a bit, you know, and it eats away at you. I've been there many a times, you know, and loads of people, you see it, you know, they eat a sweet or they eat a dessert and they think they're going to put on weight. And what that does is it feeds in to that obsession, you know. So there is a very, you know, it's a tough one, the gym, because it has so many beneficial points, but also it can be detrimental to your mental health as well. Yeah. There's pros and cons. Yeah.
When that was sort of all happening when you were younger, how did your parents deal with that?
Well, the only time that I've spoken to my parents, more so my mum, about it, me and my mum are very close. And,
You've got siblings?
I've got a younger brother who's also in recovery.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. My mum and dad, we don't come from a family of addiction, and they do say it is a family illness. So yeah, I've kind of looked back, and there isn't no one that was in active addiction that I was aware of in my family. My mum and dad, they have a drink, they've had a dabble, but they're not addicts. But yeah, so the first time I spoke to my mum properly, face to face, about my bulimia was when I was in rehab, because
So that taking it.
Yeah, and there'd been little comments throughout the years when I was living in their house. Oh, you've been sick again, Scott, because she would see it all in the toilet, or she would hear the chain pull. So she was aware that it was going on. I knew that it was going on, but I just turned a blind eye to it. I just didn't want to shame. There was a element of shame there. I'm a man. Why am I doing this?
Was there a part of you that thought that's a female thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did, and I thought to myself, I don't know life without having bulimia, without being
6
sick.
is young.
It's part of me.
Yeah.
It still is.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it.
Yeah. One thing at a time.
Because I even sit here, if I was to eat something, I would involuntarily, it would come up without me even thinking. And that's just through years. I'm 35 now, that's 29 years. Isn't it?
Have you done any damage to yourself sort of from that? Do you know?
I've got a few internal damages, but nothing like acid reflux and stuff like that. But
was there a part of you that kind of feels, oh, well, I don't take drink and drugs anymore, so I'm going to keep that little one?
There was a bit of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit of that, because, this was my oldest thing, this was part of my childhood, and I'm going to be honest, there is that voice in my head that says, well, it does work in my favour, because if I do want to have a little eat up, I'll just be sick. But really, that's the wrong way. That is wrong. It's the illness. So yeah, it's become unmanageable a good couple of times, to the point where everything I'm eating, and it's a tricky one, Hannah, because I don't look like someone that fluctuates in weight. No. I don't look like someone that's got an eating disorder, and it just goes to show you that it can be hidden.
It's a mind.
Yeah.
It's a mind thing.
Yeah.
So when you went into, that's young, isn't it, to go into the army, and how long were you in there for?
Just under 4 years.
Okay. Because you've done some tours, yeah?
I've done a tour of Afghanistan, Op Peric 10.
Yeah. How old were you when you did the tour?
I was 19 when I'd done the tour. And being on the front line, we was amongst it every single day. So we went out as a battalion.
Okay.
The Fusiliers, and you had A company that went to Sangin, and then you had B, C that went to Musakala. I was in B company. And basically, being on the front line, you're then flown into this middle of nowhere, into a forward operating base, it's called. So basically, effectively, all that's covering you is sandbags, and you've got men on stag duty 24 hours a day on each corner of the base. And yeah, it was brutal. It was a tough time for anyone that is of a young age or of any age.
Yeah.
You train for it, but there's nothing that can prepare you for it. Being a young lad, you're like, yeah, let's do it. I'm ready.
Camaraderie. I can
but
imagine.
when you start seeing
put in
things,
there, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, you do. But the problem is, it's too late for that. You've got to
crack on.
You've got to crack on.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was making the amends to my mum and dad through addiction, doing my 12 steps, and I'll never forget what my dad said. He said, look, you've not only just put us through this pain through addiction, the time in Afghanistan, every single day when there was a soldier dying, they didn't know whether it was me that, so it's been a tough time for my parents, like I'm sure it has with anyone in addiction, but they've not only had to go through the addiction side of things with me, of the worrying of, are they going to get a knock on the door? It was also the time in Afghanistan as well. And I mentioned it before, I never forget my dad when we come back from Afghanistan. I was out there for 7 months. My dad just melted. He burst into tears.
7 months.
Yeah.
Did they hear anything ever?
No. So the way it worked is if a family member if a soldier had died, it would go under op minimise, it's called. So before any news channel or anything like that knows, they would contact the family first. So my reassurance to them was, if you see it on the news, you haven't had the call.
Okay.
You know, so that was, as much as it was sad a soldier losing their lives, if they saw it on the news, it means it wasn't me before they heard of anything.
And I'm going to presume in those 7 months you made friends and lost friends.
Yes, yeah. We lost 8 men, 2 of them good friends of mine. And, you know, when you come back from something like that, well, let's say in between that, you know, whilst you're on tour, it doesn't affect you because you're still in the thick of things. It's the second that you kind of walk off that plane in Bryce Norton, something changes. I'll never forget it. When you walked off, you're happy that you're back, but, you know, it's like there's something that changes in you.
Surely you're like, what am I going to do now? Who am I?
You do, yeah. And
this big group of men that you've been with for 7 months now, you're all dispersed out.
Yeah.
Back to your own homes. You've got to go back into everyone else's normal life, which is so not your normal life. You know, you've had a regimented get up, you know, whatever, all the stuff that you've had to be doing, to now total kind of freedom.
Yeah. And the worst thing is that we came back on firework night on the 5th of November. So you can imagine it, you know, fireworks going off that evening. It wasn't good.
Did you even know what PTSD was when you got off
No.
Did they give you any kind of like, before you go home, any kind of like direction or?
Not really.
None?
No. That was back in 2009. But there is a lot of support nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, back then, you know, there was more, I would say, a culture of just get on with it. And that was the mentality that I carried and everyone else carried, hence why you see a lot of ex-military men, you know, suffering, turning to addiction. In the prison system, there was a lot of military men in there.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not a coincidence.
No.
You know, but I have to say, I do hear people say there's not support. I've received a lot of support.
Yeah.
Now.
If you want it, it's there.
100%.
Yeah.
And you know, you've got to want it, just like recovery, just like anything. You know, you can't just expect it to come to you.
Yeah.
You know.
So when you get back, do you have a plan?
Well.
And sorry, just at this point, have you ever touched a drink or a drug?
I have. Yeah, I was quite a late starter.
Same.
Yeah, I was heavily into my gym.
Yeah.
That was an addiction of mine at a young age.
Yeah.
We've already got patterns occurring here, haven't we? Because obviously we've got hindsight now, which is a great thing. So when we're looking back, it's like, you know, the bulimia, the control with that,
Yeah.
and then the gym,
Yeah.
again, control, but also obsessive mind. You know, you can see that kind of appearing already.
Yeah. And what it was for me is the gym. I would go 2-3 times a day at that age. I wouldn't eat nothing. I'd have friends. You know, I was only, 14,
Where does
15.
this come from, though? Like, did you have friends who you thought looked different to you? Did you want to look different?
I wanted to look different. And what I also wanted is I wanted to get compliments from other people.
Yeah,
because
attention's a big thing for addicts.
I couldn't give myself any compliments. You know, and that was the only way that I could feel good about myself.
Yeah, like validation from external sources,
Yeah.
because you, Scott, to yourself, when you're talking to yourself, it's fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the most unkind person to myself. No one has ever been as more unkind to me than
internal bully, innit?
Yeah.
Like 100%, and I completely agree with that. You know, if I was giving the abuse that I'd give myself, I'd probably be in prison for it.
Yeah.
You know, that's the extent of it. You know, and I'm a lot better with it nowadays, but there still creeps in.
Yeah.
You know?
Imposter syndrome, like that one at the moment.
But yeah, it definitely does creep in from time to time.
Okay, so you have not tried a drink or a drug until after the gym. You're a late starter.
I was a late starter. My first drink was about 16.
Yeah.
Drug 17.
Yeah.
Cocaine.
First one. Same. Straight off the bat.
But the second I did that, you know, my mates had done it a few years prior to that. You know, they were doing it on a regular basis. My first time, I was the last one standing.
Yeah.
I found my calling.
Yeah.
You know, it was just that woof,
Yeah.
bang, you know?
It's they say that addicts, and I looking back on this now, obviously from the learning, is that we have a different reaction to a non-addict the first time we take drink and drugs. And I think back to that, and I think, yeah, because my first line was at 20, and by 23 I was doing 3-day benders and taking drugs to work.
Exactly.
That progression is that's quite quick. For 23 years, you're already at that stage.
Exactly.
And I've done another 7.
Yeah.
So did you quite like the fact that the people around you on that first session were like, fucking hell, here he goes?
Yeah, I did. And for me, I found it comforting in the sense of, you know, I'm good at this.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I used to get told that.
Yeah. I'm the party man.
Was that it, kind of like straight off the bat with Coke? Were you then, or did it?
So, yeah, Coke and gambling was my
Yeah.
thing then.
They go hand in hand for a lot of people.
Yeah. I was the type of person.
Were you gambling already before you'd started the Coke?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gambling
we've
at a young age.
Yeah, so bulimia, gym, gambling,
Yeah.
then you met Coke.
I was going into bookies, take my school tie off,
Yeah.
my blazer off, with a friend, got off the bus, and we'd go on the roulette machines then, you know. And let me explain the feeling as to what I got at that age that I would still get now when it kind of escalated. You press that button on that roulette wheel, everything around me becomes silent.
Yeah.
All that matters, I'm hyper focused on this roulette wheel. Does it really bother me about the winning or the losing? Really? I don't think it does. It's about me being sucked into that wheel, spinning round, and everything else in my head is silent.
Yeah.
That is the feeling that for me, as a gambling addict, it changed the way I feel.
Yeah.
You know, losing changed the way I feel, winning changed the way I feel. So that is for me the reason why I gambled.
That's what I had with cocaine. Like, I would look around at other people being quite scatty, quite hyper. I was like, that's what I'm like without drugs, without cocaine because of my ADHD. Now, I'm not saying I wasn't like elevated in the beginning. Obviously, by the end, it was just me doing it all on my own. But I would be able to do what we're doing now and have this sort of single focus conversation without all of the noise in my own brain.
Yeah.
And I think that it's the same with things that when we find things with people who have ADHD that make our brain go quiet, that is like, we've never known that.
No.
We've never known a quiet brain. So when it comes from an external substance or something like gambling, we're like, oh God, this is kind of bad, but also obviously that's why I'm going to enjoy it so much more than the average person.
Exactly. And it comes hand in hand. For me, it was the booze, the gambling and the cocaine. And you put them three together, it's like a weapon of mass destruction because, you know, financially, emotionally, it causes so much damage because, you know, you've got you're with the alcohol and the cocaine, you're completely out your face. Yeah. So, you know, your thoughts of losing substantial amounts of money, it just goes out the window. You know, the fact that you've got rent to pay and there's that money, £1,300 sitting in the bank waiting to pay for the rent, and that goes in seconds.
But naturally you think, I'll win off that.
Yeah, of course you do.
You never doubt yourself.
Yeah.
Because you've won once before.
And that's what keeps you...
And that's enough to keep you playing.
That's what keeps you going.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one little gambling thing that I had, and it sticks to me. I won £8,000 before, and it was on this specific online site. And that was on a Friday night. I was obviously using and drinking. And I was sensible. I actually withdrew it. I thought, £8,000. But this specific gambling site, it didn't instantly withdraw the money. It left it cleverly in a holding thing. So Saturday night comes, I've had no sleep, I'm still getting on it. This voice in my head says, you've got 8 there, let's get to 10. Right? Let's get to 10, let's get to 10, let's get to 10. Within 5 minutes, that £8,000 was gone because I wanted £2,000 more. I had the audacity, this must have been at like 3 in the morning, to ring up this gambling site. Yeah, I swear, ring them up and say, you allowed me to gamble. I blamed them. It's their fault. It's their fault for allowing me to blow that £8,000.
Yeah.
And because I was shouting so loud, my ex-partner, she comes running down and says, what's going on? They've just lost me £8,000.
Yeah, it's
I'm
their
still
fault.
in denial about it,
Yeah.
you know? And that is where it gets you.
I've done things like that, but with parking tickets and stuff. And then I'll be on the session, I'll be ringing them up like, this is ridiculous.
Oh.
I did that. You do mad stuff.
Yeah.
Mad stuff. Like even calling, you know, when you've got to call in sick to work and things like that. Are the excuses?
Oh, don't.
Oh,
Yeah.
my grandpa's died about 17
Yeah.
times.
I've had, I can quite, you know, I shamefully say that I've quite happily at the time said that my daughters have been rushed to hospitals.
Yeah.
You know, I've carried it on, you know, because I think to myself, how brutal can I get? So then it gives me a couple more days,
Yeah.
them off my back, so I
Yeah.
can carry on using.
Yeah.
Do anything.
But the pleasure you get when you've managed to do all that organising, you kind of get that initial panic of, I'm here now, I'm in this situation and I need to carry on.
Yeah.
So let's just stop, I'll do a line, then I'll make the phone calls that I need to make. I'm going to get everything prepared, and the relief that you get, it doesn't matter, you're not thinking about the lies you've told or the
No.
stories, but the relief you get to then be able to just sit in a room on your own and carry on.
I know.
That's
Sad.
like, in a way, and I was speaking about this the other day, in a way, the picking up of the drugs, it's the giving into the addict brain is more relief, right? Because, like, even if, you know when you're, like, coming down on the stash, right, but you know that if you don't know that there's drugs coming yet, you could then put the text in, know that then they've replied, just knowing that you're going to get them, all of a sudden you're not coming down.
Yeah.
You don't have another line,
No.
but you just know that you're going to get more. So all of a sudden you're like, fine.
Wow. And the elation you
Yeah.
get when they're in
It's
your
more of a
hands.
buzz.
It's, yeah, I've never been, the birth of my kids, anything, I've never been so like happy
Yeah.
when I pick up that.
It's the
sa-
relief
yeah.
as well, especially if you know, like I used to get put to work to be the person to get stuff, you know, like if you're on that 3-dayer, oh, Hannah will know someone.
Yeah.
And I used to thrive in that, embarrassingly so.
No, yeah.
And I would be the person that would drive,
Yeah.
you know, always be the person that would put their life at risk. I don't even think about that. I don't even think about it.
Of course not.
Um,
And put others at risk. I've done it with my daughters in the car,
Yeah,
driving
I mean,
an
I've
hour
picked
down.
drugs up before with a dealer who's got car seats in the back, and I was laughing with him about it.
Yeah.
I look back at that now and I think, Christ. But it's desperation. That is it.
100%.
It's desperation, and all we can do is live a sober amends now.
Yeah.
And make awareness to it. So when you get off. Sorry, actually, I just want to ask. So before you go in, you've obviously tried drinking drugs. When you then go in, everything, I presume, although I have heard that drugs are not used in the forces.
Drugs are used heavily.
Yeah, that's what I was
And
getting
drink
at.
every day. Cocaine, yeah. And it's part of the lifestyle.
Yeah.
Every night.
Yeah.
Um,
So how is an average day looking before you're going to Afghanistan?
what in the army? It would be we'd have done a lot of preparation for Afghanistan, but every time we'd finished our day, it would be down the pub. It would be going out every single night. That was, you know, that was the lifestyle of being a soldier. You're not staying in. You know, we're
Well, you have
drinking
to sit
every.
with your feelings. You have to sit with your
Yeah,
feelings then, don't you?
but it was just drinking. Everything centred around drink. And yeah, that was just how it was in the army. And you know, shortly after we come back from Afghanistan, we had some time off. That's when the raving started.
Yes.
Yes, that's when the raving started. That's when I started going, you know, really experimenting with, you know, E's,
Yeah.
MDMA and ketamine and all that stuff. And then I'll be honest, I put the coke down. When I found those drugs and, you know, I was going to the raving, that was another calling that I'd found because it was like, wow, you know, I felt alive.
Yeah. And in this period of time off from Afghanistan, is anything happening mentally when you're coming down off taking drugs? Are you being affected? Because I'm just thinking like loud music, raves, obviously PTSD from the sound of Afghanistan.
Yeah. I was very jittery.
I
and
only
I
ask
still am.
because I had a friend who, I just said to you in the car, I don't know him anymore, but he was in the Marines from 16 and we went out for New Year. Again, fireworks, like you say.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. He was down on the floor, scrambling through the crowd, and we all thought he was joking.
Yeah.
He was not joking.
No.
He was, the look in his eyes of terror, he genuinely, obviously, was being transported back to something.
Yeah.
You couldn't get him out of it.
No. And that's the thing with PTSD. It transports you back to that place. You know, it's as if you're still there.
I think for people who have never experienced it, it's like one of those things, even like people who don't understand addiction, it's really hard because you kind of think, does that really like it's, you know, you can't imagine the fact that you get taken back to somewhere that the brain has the capability to do that.
It does, and it's so real. I never forget one time that, you know, I was in a passenger seat and I was going through a bit of psychosis, you know, but I had to get my ex-partner to stop the car because I kept seeing Taliban in my head. I kept going down for cover. Crazy things like that, you know. Fireworks are a thing for me.
Is it quite hard when that's happening? Do you keep that to yourself because you think it looks and sounds crazy?
Oh, definitely.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. I'm a lot more open with things now.
Yeah.
But I never really spoken about them until I have found recovery. And now that I have started speaking about them, you know, I do feel a lot more, I feel a release.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Keeping things in, for me, they were a recipe for disaster because I couldn't control my thoughts. They just kept going round and round and round. And I always use the analogy of like that fizzy Coke or whatever, it, you know, and you just shake it and open that lid up quickly. That's what my use up would be, you know, because I just could not contain it all. The only way that I knew how to release that was to
Get out your face.
get out my face.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to stop.
No,
because then I knew
that you go back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll just carry on until I would collapse 4 or 5 days down the line. I'll go on the missing list. You know?
Did any particular drugs make it worse?
One,
I'm just thinking, like, you know, when we get sort of into the realms of day 3 on a heavy session and you've got shadow men and you're seeing things and you're hearing things, I can imagine that with PTSD from Afghanistan is not... Did those interlink?
big time.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, the amount of times I've been downstairs on my own and I've been screaming.
Yeah.
I've been screaming at what I'm seeing. And, you know, the children's mums come down. What's going on? What's up? Can't you see it? It's there. It's there. You know, I'm so adamant. And the thing is I can still see those things in my head that they're that real.
Yeah.
You know, even though that's the psychosis. You know, and it's just, yeah, it's not there, but it is. And that's where I can see it as clear as day.
Is that quite difficult for her though, because she's thinking, is that the drugs or is that the...
Yeah, it was very difficult for her. Very difficult for her. She, you know, being with someone that was using every day. You know, our lives were completely separated. You know, the lies, the manipulation. There was no relationship there at all. The only thing that I cared about was you know, that's all that said.
So you came back, got straight into the rave scene, and she's just there looking after the kids, and you're off partying.
Well, no, we wasn't together at that time.
Okay.
We got together in 2013. So I come back from Afghanistan in 2009. I come out the army in end of 2011. And that's when we kind of started talking. And then we properly got together 2013. I was deep in addiction at this stage. And I was after a geographical. So we moved to Marbella.
Yeah, because that'll work.
That will work. And
I like your choice there.
Yeah. So yeah, there was we moved to Marbella and party lifestyle. It was perfect for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely perfect. Partying every day. I got involved with some other bits and pieces out there, you know, moving drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
Got paid quite well.
Naturally.
But you know, sometimes got paid with drugs as well.
Yes, that does happen.
And I thought I was a gangster.
Yeah, of course you did.
I thought I was the man.
Yeah.
You know,
feeding that ego.
Feeding that ego,
nicely.
even, yeah.
And you get to carry on taking drugs and drinking.
Exactly.
Phenomenal.
Every single day. Yeah.
What does she think you're doing? Is she aware of it?
To be honest with you, I would turn my phone off and that would be it. I'd be gone for a few...
But in terms of a job,
yeah.
you were just saying, I'm doing work.
Yeah. And that was as far as it would go.
So she probably knew.
Yeah, she probably knew deep down. The thing is, I was so manipulative in what I would say and what I would do.
Yeah.
That, you know, I convinced myself I was telling the truth, let alone other people. You know, I genuinely believe my own lies. And when you're faced with someone that believes their own lies, it's very hard to kind of not believe them because they're so convincing. You know? to the point where I would be wrong, but I would manipulate her in thinking that she was wrong.
Gaslight.
She was mad, you know, like. But that was when we had our little girl, my eldest, actually in Spain, Marbella. But then once we had our eldest, it was time for us to kind of move back to England. So we moved back in 2016.
Any scary stories from Marbella?
Yeah, I. Right, so I was. I got on a boat in Seville to pick up some drugs from Morocco.
How much are we talking?
A lot of drugs.
Kilos?
Yes,
All
yeah.
right.
So I'm on this boat with some Spanish fellow who can't speak a word of English. When I'm
Like a pirate Spanish fellow.
When I'm talking a boat, right? This boat, it had holes in and everything. The worst thing about it is that when I got the call, I'd been on a session for 3 days, and when you get these calls, you've got to go. You've got to go.
Yeah.
You know, I was also thinking of the money as well, so that was it. I got picked up, drove all the way to Seville. I then stayed the night around this guy's house, and then we got on the boat, and from Seville we went to Morocco. But the journey, I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to die.
You would come down at this point now.
Oh yeah, I'm honestly. I was smoking about 100 fags.
Yeah.
Like
no top to the boat, I'm presuming.
no,
No.
it was the most unsafest thing that you could.
Like a rowing boat with an engine.
I genuinely thought I was going to die.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought I was going to die. The waves were. We was out there for just under 2 days, and then we get the call, and so we've come into the dock, and all of a sudden these spotlights come on. It was the Moroccan army, guns, yeah. They've jumped on the boat.
That's a bad come down there.
I was stranded in Morocco for 3 weeks.
Wait, carry on. So they come.
So they pulled us off the boat. They obviously knew what we was doing, but luckily, what happened is that the payment to the Moroccans, they didn't pay the police to clear the border. If you get what I'm saying.
Okay.
So, yeah, we ended up getting caught, but thank God the drugs weren't on board.
I was going to say.
Yeah, the drugs weren't on board. They knew what we was doing, but obviously
they didn't have anything to prove it. It was kind of hearsay, she say, he say.
Exactly. They asked, what are you doing here? I said, I just wanted a tour.
holiday.
Yeah, I didn't know what to say. And that's what I genuinely said. I said, I just wanted a little tour.
That's what I would have said.
Oh.
I just met this lovely gentleman here and just doing a tour of the island.
And that was it, really. I was in this cell, and I'll never forget it because it was this one tiny cell, and there was about 20 illegal immigrants in there where they've been caught coming through the border. And then they've said, right, you can go. They've let me out. But then I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to get back? I was stranded. I had no money. I had no phone because I threw the phone overboard. I was on the streets. And I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to do.
What happened to the guy driving the boat?
He was with me.
Oh, right, okay.
But I couldn't speak to him.
No.
He couldn't speak a word of English. It was, honestly, it was tough. I genuinely got scared. I didn't know what I was going to do. Then I had this brainwave. I thought, right, I'm going to quickly try and go onto an internet cafe. I had no money, but I begged this Moroccan. Managed to go on Facebook and send a message to my ex-partner. She was heavily pregnant at the time with my eldest. But then she managed to come over, and I had a court case there. I wasn't allowed to leave because basically, if you was to do it legally, you get stamped in and out. I did take my passport because that's what you, in case something happened. But yeah.
Is that your first time trying to do that, or had you kind of done a few trips and gotten away with it?
Yeah.
Right. What do you end up telling the big kingpin then?
They thought I was dead.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably for the best.
Yeah, they thought I was dead. When it all kind of, I met them and spoke to them, they kind of knew at that stage.
Yeah.
Obviously through my ex-partner, she managed to spread the word. But that was a scary time.
Did it stop you selling drugs?
That was the final straw in the coffin.
We're back to the UK now.
And
okay.
I'll be honest with you, right? I wasn't, I can say it now, but I hated doing that. But it was, once again, going back to those gym days of people thinking I am that gratification. I wanted to be that one, that.
I think as well, a lot of this, like, the thrill you know, getting away with things.
Oh, yeah.
And I know this isn't the same, but essentially, you know, the driving thing, you know, going out to get drugs, you get back, you shouldn't have been driving, you get back and you're like, oh.
God, the relief.
Yeah.
It is, and that is a
thing,
buzz.
but it's also because you're so jacked up,
Yeah.
trying to, you know, get it. And then you get back and you're like, it's so selfish because you don't think of anyone else on the road.
No.
You just think, I'm alive, I've got my drugs and I can sesh.
And not just this, like, you're in a van, right, and you go through the tolls, and sometimes there's police checkpoints. You're telling yourself you're going to get caught. Your heart is pumping a million miles an hour, but then you drive through that checkpoint.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a ton of gear on the back, and it's like, wow, like I've got.
Yeah, that's what I mean, that thrill.
Yeah, it's like having a drug. It is, and that was what kept pulling me back. Of course, the money, of course, the lifestyle. However, you know, it wasn't me. It wasn't me.
How much would you be earning, sort of roughly, in the Marbella days?
A job between 5,000 to 10,000.
Yeah, I was thinking because that's like quite big time drug dealing.
Yeah, I was the driver, so I was the one that kind of put my freedom on the line, transporting the drugs. And if I was to get caught, that would be on me. Do you get what I'm saying? So, but you know, like I said, I was attracted to the lifestyle. I was attracted to the money.
It suited your lifestyle because, you know, okay, so we come back from Marbella.
With a massive addiction. And we wasn't very good at that stage.
No.
You know, obviously we didn't have a house at that time, so we moved back into my mum and dad's with a new baby, in the process of looking for a place to rent.
So they know what you're doing for work?
They didn't know what I was doing, no.
No.
I told the family that I was working in a gym. They would have they know now, but they would have flipped their lid if they knew.
Course, yeah.
You know? Because I was a very good concealer. I could hide things, you know, and I've hid things from a young age. I was very good at it. I was very good at that poker face, you know. So I could convince anything to anyone. So yeah, I said that I worked in the gym. I'd go through this little story. Yeah, I'm doing this course, that course. I know all the things to say. But yeah, that it was just lies. They come out one time, my mum and dad, to visit us, and you know, I'll never forget. We went out for something to eat. I was charged out my head. You know, the first day they come out there, I picked up a packet, couldn't eat. You know, I was cleaning out the toilets. They knew because they've said it to me since. Because it just took over my life. I couldn't be me without that. You know, that was me. Nothing else mattered.
Was that also because when you weren't on drugs, you were remembering horrible things that had happened?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
Do you think there's ever been a time that you've really, probably maybe now, actually dealt with the loss of those friends?
Yeah, 100%. PTSD never goes away, but it can be, you can, with the right therapy, you can help when you get these flashbacks. It's all about kind of...
Like a coping mechanism.
Coping mechanism. It's all about, you know, like we discussed earlier, when you have a flashback, your brain is telling you that you're there right now. It's about having the awareness to kind of remove yourself back from there and say, right, hold on, this is a flashback. This isn't happening now. Take a couple of deep breaths. And it works. It does really work. It's about having that self-awareness.
If you don't even know to take deep breaths or do that, you know, because you haven't got advice on that, your brain just takes you away from it.
Of course it does. Of course it does. And, you know, when you're having these things in psychosis as well, it's a double whammy.
Yeah, that I mean, because I've had psychosis, but I mean, the thought of having that mixed with PTSD, the reality that must bring.
Yeah, it's a double whammy.
Okay, so you're back in the UK.
Back in the UK.
And I'm presuming we don't change jobs just yet.
We do.
Okay.
And you're not going to believe it. What a job change this is. So I've gone from this Marbella gangster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going into a cash in transit officer. Refilling cash machines.
Yeah.
Had to get security checked.
So you're one of the guys that leaves those vans with the case and the helmet and the guarded, what's it called? A visor.
Visor.
Yeah.
Once again, do you know what attracted me? It was
You
that
thought you could take the
uniform.
money.
It was that helmet, you know? It was that, you know, I'm going to be walking down the street and people are going to be looking at me like, whoa,
Yeah,
it did.
he's carrying that cash.
Yeah.
He's got responsibility.
It did. It did. And I've got to be honest with that. And, You know, when you look back at it now, but you think to yourself, if only they knew that, you know, a couple of months prior to that, I was stranded in Morocco. Do you know what I mean? And the
And now
DBS
you're doing
check.
you're doing, what is that, like government work?
Yeah, the
You're doing
DBS
government
check
work.
took ages. It took absolutely ages. But obviously, because I
can't
haven't
believe
a
you got
criminal
accepted
record.
to do that job.
Yeah, but I
You
hadn't
don't
had a
have
criminal record.
But when they say to you in the interview, so what have you been up to recently?
I just said, I've just been working in the gym abroad. Yeah, give it all
Stranded
the
on the
spill.
island, picking up kilos of
Yeah,
gear.
and that was, but still at this time, I was heavy in addiction. I really was.
When we say heavy, now listen, I changed my ways on this because when I first started the page,
Yeah.
I was talking about grams, sessions, and I do still talk about the day thing because I think that's important because that's how we get into psychosis and things like that. I sometimes worry about talking about consumption because I feel that people will maybe compare.
Yeah.
However, I do think it's important to talk about it at sort of the back end of sort of our addiction days, sort of, you know, how much we were consuming when you say heavy in addiction, just ballpark, are we saying daily?
Daily, yeah, 4 to 5 grams a day.
Yeah, and there's no sleep.
No sleep.
But would you take things like benzos?
No.
Never.
No.
Okay. So you basically, that was like me by the end. So you just session till you passed out.
Session till I passed
Yeah.
out. Session to the point
You
where
don't even get come downs by that point.
No.
Because you just pass out.
Yeah.
I was like that by the end.
and then I wouldn't be able to, you know, move for 2 days.
No,
But
I was
then
like that.
the
and then
second I
straight
could,
back.
it would be back.
Yeah.
You know, the thing
The
is for
days
me.
in between get less and less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is for me is where I lived, my dealer was an hour away in the car.
So you just pick up big bits.
So I picked up big bits, you know, and that would last me 24 hours. Then the next day I'll do exactly the same thing. But I weren't paying for this stuff. I was ticking it.
Oh,
Yeah?
see, I never ticked.
I was ticking it.
Maybe twice in my life, but
I was ticking it. 5 grams a day, 4, sometimes 6.
so you're paying it off monthly?
Every week to 2 weeks,
Every week,
I was
okay.
paying it off. Was I paying it off? No.
No.
Was my family? Yes.
Okay, so let's get into that
Got the
for a little
family
bit.
involved, yeah.
So 4 or 5 grams a week. So your grams about 100 quid? No, you probably got cheaper because you're doing so much.
Yeah, I was doing about £300 a day.
£300 a day. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
When does it get to a point where they have to take over funding that?
Very quickly, really. But I got away with it for the first couple of months by saying to them that it wasn't for drugs. I would say for other things.
Yeah.
You know, the car's broken down. Went for an MOT and that's broken. Oh, we've had a debt collector at the door. It was something that I didn't pay for before my bail. Just loads of different type of things. Rent needs to be paid and I've not been paid yet, but I'll pay it back next week, knowing that I weren't going to.
No.
That emotional manipulation, more so at this stage to my nan and granddad. My granddad's no longer with us, unfortunately, but I would literally, I was very close to them growing up, very, very close. And I emotionally manipulated them into giving me thousands and thousands of pounds. It very quickly accelerated into them knowing what it was for. But they kept doing it for me because I kept promising them that this was the last time. But the thing that I was doing is that I was being taken to the bank by my dad, because they'll call me mum and dad, they'll be around, it'd be such a big ordeal, obviously. My nan's in tears.
And you don't care, do you?
I don't. I'm saying he's going to kill me, this drug dealer. He weren't. But this was to accelerate how quick they can give me this money. I needed it now.
Scare them.
Yeah. You know, my elderly nan, you know. But then my dad would take me down to the bank. We'd go into Halifax. He'd draw out 3-4 grand. And he'd say, right, I want to give this to the drug dealer so that I know that you're giving it and that is it. Once again, I'd overpower my dad and say, no, you're not, Dad. I'm paying for this. I'm going in there. I don't want you to get involved. So I'd get in the car.
I'm protecting you, Dad.
Yeah, all that type of stuff.
Don't want you seeing people like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he'd drop me off. I'd get in the car. I'd give the couple of grand over, and then I'd pick up 10 grams. You know.
Yeah. So you've
And I'd put them in my pocket, get in my dad's car, and I'd say, that's it, Dad. Never again. But really, I'm thinking, oh, I cannot wait. I've got this in here.
I've got the drugs,
Do you know what I mean? And that's how it went. Obviously, within this time, I'm doing the cash in transit job. I'm working shifts though, so I was able to do it in the sense of I was working 3 12-hour shifts a week.
Yeah.
Sorry, 4. So I had 3 days off. I'd sometimes do a bit of cash in hand work, right, which was a bit of labour and building work. So I'd get a bit of cash in hand.
How much is the transit job paying?
I would be getting about 1,800 a month.
Okay. And you're living at home?
Living at home, yeah, we've got a place now, you know, renting a place, me, my daughter and mum. But life was unmanageable.
Yeah.
It
so
was.
you're dropping those large sums of money, obviously, and driving a van off your face.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you feel
100%.
totally in control, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you always having to drink
Yeah.
to use? Same. Yeah.
But it did get, it did.
Actually saying that, initially, yes, but then I could have a Diet Coke. As long as there was cocaine on the table,
Yeah.
I'm good.
That's for me, same.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, as long as the Coke was there, that would, you know, that was my number one.
Same.
Yeah. Drink, it was very important
The gateway.
for me, but if I had just had the drink, I wouldn't be content.
Yeah, like, you know, when you've got to go and do that shop run, I wouldn't need to go and do that on the second day.
No.
If I had cocaine there, that was fine.
That is it, yeah.
Yeah, but you know, people who have sessions before, the alcohol is like, they've got to go and do that 8 o'clock shop run. They've got to have the booze. Okay, so you're doing the cash transit job. You're spending about £300 a day. Mum, everyone's aware of it because they're funding it.
Yeah.
And you're doing a bit of labour work on the side. Where does it all go? It's got to start falling apart at the seams.
Yeah, it starts falling apart
Because
very
this
quickly
is-
because what happens
Got to start spiralling.
is I got to the stage where I could not live normal life. Not that it was normal before, but I couldn't go to work. I couldn't face getting in that car. It was at that point now where I couldn't face getting in the car driving to work, the psychosis. So I had to call in and say my mental health is really bad. So I got signed off for a couple of months.
Would you use being an ex-soldier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have done.
I'm only thinking how I would think. by
Yeah,
the way.
no,
That's
yeah.
not me judging you.
No, yeah.
I'm saying that if I was in your position, that would have been my probably number one go-to excuse.
I would use anything, yeah.
Yeah.
But I had that bit of ammunition.
Yeah.
You know, even though that was the truth, but it
is the
wouldn't
truth,
be
but
on
you-
occasions.
But you're saying it's just that, not anything to do with the drink and the drugs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly that. But once again, you know, once I stopped going to work, my using got heavier and heavier and heavier. And I exhausted every avenue with my family. I can't put a figure on the amount that they give me, but I'm talking I'm talking a lot of money. I can't put a figure on it, but well over £50,000,
Yeah.
I would say. So in my mind, you know,
Was there a point, where they tried to stop you?
there was a point they tried to stop me, but you know, I kind of I told them what I knew they wanted to hear. I was able to.
I'll stop when I'm ready, or it'll be this time. It'll be this time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd put on the tears, you know, I'd do anything I possibly can to convince them. But deep down, now that I know the feeling of, I know when I know that I was ready to stop using drugs. I know, I can identify now that when I was saying it then, I wasn't ready because I knew deep down that I was going to use again. So yeah, I would just tell them what I knew that they wanted to hear. And that's how I kind of got through. But I was gradually getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, because you're not working now.
Because I'm not working, you know. Things were really shit at home, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was a daily user. Every single day, just my life centred around it. But I couldn't pay for these drugs. Couldn't pay for them anymore. But I still needed to use these drugs. I couldn't live without them at this time. So I had to think of a way. I was in debt, about £3,000. I couldn't get any more drugs because I was in debt. So then this little thought in my head thinks, right, well, the only thing I know what to do is what I used to do for work, doing the cash box. And that's what I ended up doing. Got in the car, probably after a 4 or 5 day bender, in the family car seat still in the back. Knew where the depot was, obviously, because I worked there. Waited for a van to come out.
Do you know how much is going to be in the boxes?
Yeah, either 20,000 or 40,000.
Right.
On the van, you know, there's well over £1 million on these vans.
Fuck.
Yeah. because you're doing about 20 different jobs. So there is a lot. There was no intention of me of robbing the van. No way. All that I cared about was
enough to get you sorted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was at that stage, you know, they mention it in the rooms, jails, institutions and death. And I'll never forget it. When I was driving down to do this and I was following this van, you know, my options were, I didn't really want to do this, you know, but I had to in my head. My head was telling me I had to. And I thought to myself, what's the worst that can happen? I can go to prison. And I thought, maybe that's a good thing. Because the way I'm living now.
That's so true.
It, honestly, I'll never forget it. And
when you weighed it up, it was like, whichever
I don't
way
care.
it goes, I don't care.
You know, prior to that, you know, I tried to end my life a few times, overdose. That was in the family home. You know, that was once again ambulance having to come. You know, kids in the house. Because the feelings that I felt then was, I cannot physically stop using drugs. I'm hurting everyone around me. They're just better off without me.
Yeah.
You know, I can't do this anymore. You know, I just genuinely can't. And yeah, that was all in front of, you know, my family and my kids. I'm so glad that I didn't go through with it. I'm so glad that it didn't happen because, you know, now I realise that there is a way out, you know.
So do you get the money?
I do.
So do you take it off the guy who's bringing it from the van to the bank?
Yes.
You grab it?
Yeah, the box gets grabbed, run back into the car. And the worst thing about this is that, you know, I was in the car and I've looked at, it must have been about 6 o'clock in the morning. And I've looked to the right-hand side and I parked up this residential street and this family are coming out their house. They're watching someone with a box run into the car. I've looked at this family and I'm thinking, fuck, like, we're going to get caught here.
Yeah.
Drove.
So is there two of you? There's a guy driving the car, then you've gone out, you've gone and grabbed the cake. You just grabbed it? Or you punched him? Or?
I was in the car.
Okay.
So, yeah, the box was grabbed and then brought back into the car.
Okay.
And then I drove. Yeah.
This way.
And, yeah, the box was opened and then there was £20,000 in there.
Ka-ching.
Yeah. Paid the drug dealer off straight away.
Yeah.
Bought more drugs.
Yeah. Did you spend the full 20?
Yeah. That just funded that lifestyle. It just funded it for a short time. But I had this weight on my shoulders. I'm thinking, how have I not been caught for this?
Yeah.
How has someone that has followed a van with CCTV camera on the back, that has been seen by family, with no concealment of the registration plate, no concealment of face, how have I not been caught this? So 6 months have gone past and, you know, I'm still, you know, using heavily, finding ways and means. And then flying squad come through the door about 3-4 o'clock in the morning.
Is that armed?
Yeah. And I knew.
Were you on a sesh?
And I was on a sesh. Oh. And do you know the mad thing about it is that, you know, every time, you know, because this was in the back of my mind, I would always go into Google and I'd put in robbery and the place that I'd done the robbery. Nothing was coming up. And I'm thinking, this ain't right. Why isn't nothing coming up? That night I'd done exactly that. And when flying squad come through the door, I'd obviously hadn't exited out the Google search.
No.
But that wasn't what
They knew.
They knew.
Yeah.
And I, as soon as they come through, I knew what they was there for.
Yeah.
I just held my hands up.
Yeah.
Because it was a relief. Not only the fact of, you know, I've come clean for that, but the fact of I hated the way my life was.
Yeah.
Using every day.
I was the same though. Like I knew I had to lose everything and I used to sit there wishing that people would find me. Like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I knew that I had to lose the job, crash the car.
Yeah.
And it all had to come crashing down before I was actually going to do something about it because drugs are fucking conniving. And they make you, if you're just about hanging on to everything,
Yeah.
you think that, oh, it's all right.
I used to get comfort in thinking to myself, right, that, you know, when I was using, that when I fall asleep, I hope that I'd never wake up. But then if I did wake up, at least I can use again.
Yeah.
That's what I tell myself.
Was our fun.
Yeah. But I felt my heart coming out my chest. I'm thinking, please, can I be having a heart attack? Genuinely.
Yeah, so funny, like the amount of times where we've prayed, but it's to stay alive.
Oh, yeah.
like, had no spiritual awareness
No.
at any stage of my life. But as soon as I think I'm going to die, oh God, please, I promise I won't do it again.
Yeah.
Promise I won't do it again.
And I tell you what, I bet every addict has done that, yeah? And that's what I say to people that are in the fellowship when they struggle with the God part. You know, it's a spiritual program, you know, but how many times have you cried out for God's help when, you know, the dealer wasn't answering their phone or something like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm going to presume that led to prison.
It did. I got sentenced to 12 years, down to 8 because I pleaded guilty. Yeah. What played the part in that was the fact that I worked for the company.
Yeah.
Insider knowledge. There was no insider knowledge at all, you know. Saying that, I knew where the depot was, but the way they kind of worded it was, you know, I was ex-army, you know, insider knowledge, I knew how to open the box and all that stuff. So quite understandably, it didn't work in my favour. And yeah, I got 8 years. And yeah.
Where did you go to prison?
They put me into high down, and I'll never forget my first experience in there. It was scary.
Yeah.
You know, you go into this holding cell with other people that have just got in, or in the middle of a transfer from prison to prison, and I'm sitting there with these guys around me, and there's these 2 big lumps, and they're looking around at us. They've obviously been in the prison system a while, and they've picked on this guy next to me, and they're accusing him of concealing a parcel up him. Yeah. So he's made the guy have a shit on the floor to see. And he's ended up beating the guy black and blue. And I'm in my head, this is my first experience of prison. In my head, I'm thinking, I'm next here. I'm going to be next. Luckily, the prison officers came in and obviously sorted it all out. But you never, you know.
So you knew not to mess with those 2 straight off.
Yeah, and I just thought, wow, this is what it's going to be. You know, that was the first time I stepped foot in a prison, and I thought, fucking hell. And no matter what, there's one thing I will never forget when you go to prison. It's that first time when you're walking onto that wing and you see 100,000 of eyes on you, weighing you up, looking at you up and down. You know, they could tell I was scared. You know, I was like a rabbit in the headlights. You know, the echoes, the smells, the keys. It was just a complete different environment to be in. You don't know no one.
All you know, I suppose, as well, is sort of like what you hear about prison, which is there's this hierarchy thing.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely like you don't look at one person in a certain way. You've got all that to figure out.
All of it.
You know, who's top dog.
It's a complete different world.
Who's the drug dealer? Who's the thing? Who you're not going to mess with? And then I suppose you in a cell with just one other person.
Yeah. And it was tough. It was real tough, especially coming off of the drugs as well. You know. But what I did is I managed to turn it around and become obsessive with my fitness again from day one. Survival mode. You know, I'd literally go out on the exercise yard and I'd train and I'd be noticed. God, look at him. You know, and there's a very, very large training ethos in prison.
Yeah.
There it is. And I was one of those guys that was the fit one, you know, train with him. And that's how I got through my prison. I didn't use.
There's
4 years.
Did you see a lot of drugs in prison though?
Oh, it's easy. It's triple the price. But I would say spice is the most heavily used in there. And to see someone on spice, it's quite scary.
Demonic, isn't it?
Oh, big time.
Yeah.
And the things they would do for it as well. You know, cleaning other prisoner cells. You know, just desperate things.
Was that first story you told about prison, was that the worst thing you saw in there?
I see someone get stabbed, and that was in High Point. That was like when I first got there as well. There's loads of crap that happens in prison. I was there through COVID, and I was in Coldenley, and the cells that we were in didn't have toilets. So obviously COVID first hit. The world, let alone the prison system, didn't know how to handle it. So we was just locked up for 24 hours a day, food being brought to ourselves, shitting in bags, pissing in bottles, shower once a week, fresh air once a week. It was tough. It was real tough. You know, there was people, you know, cutting up and everything because it was really, really grim, you know. I had a few thoughts sometimes there because that summer was really hot, if you remember, 2020.
Yeah,
it was really hot, and I'm in this cell and I'm thinking, I can't deal with this anymore. Like, this is when's this going to end? You know, you're seeing all that you can do in there is look at the news because you want to know what's going on. That's making everything worse.
And how sort of things, obviously you're coming off the drugs here and you're feeling obviously back into fitness, but how is your mental health at this point?
Very, tough.
Fragile.
Yeah, very fragile. I attempted to get help. You know, I went on a few substance misuse courses. I went on a few counselling sessions. It's so inconsistent in prison.
It's so hard as well because it's not like you can actively go out and try to do some other things, you know, you are...
And I'm going to be honest with you, that part of my time there, I was ashamed of being seen to be going to substance misuse courses.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be looked at as that person.
Yeah, all weak in prison.
Yeah. Now I don't. That's
course.
part of my identity.
Yeah.
But then it wasn't. I didn't. I was in denial still at that time. You know, and with my mental health, I was just thinking to myself, "Come on, just sort yourself out." You know.
Were you surprised that you didn't get into drugs in prison? Or was it a fear thing of...
For me, it was... I was in survival mode in the sense of... To take drugs, it was far too much of a risk for me to do that. You know, I was on edge in prison all the time. You know, I really did keep myself to myself, but not one part of my prison sentence was I comfortable. You know, I was very lonely.
Looking over your shoulder all the time.
Yeah, not that I was in trouble or got into trouble, but you know what also didn't help was the fact of that my offence wasn't on Google. You know, it wasn't on the news. So you know, you'd get some prisoners that come up to me, "What are you in for, mate?" And I'll tell them.
Is it what they say that you're not supposed to ask each other that?
No, everyone asks.
Yeah.
You know, and you know if you're asked, they want to see your papers. You show them your papers, because if you get thrown under the bus of being a sex offender,
I've heard.
you know, and yeah, I
They presume that you were that because you weren't on the news.
sex offender, domestic violence, that type of thing. You know, it was thrown about, and I'm thinking, I can't. I know, you know.
Yeah.
So I showed my papers a few times, and obviously it said robbery, but you know that was a worry for me in the sense of like, if some people, if they don't even want to ask for the papers, it's just bang, smash him up. You know, that's what it was like. I got through prison unscathed, and I truly think it was because of a few reasons. I kept myself to myself, and my fitness. I feel like my fitness was my armour in prison because people would see I was very fit.
Did you help people as well?
I helped people.
Yeah.
You know,
They came to you for training.
training on the wings. You know, and I was fit as a fiddle. You know, I've always been a fit guy.
Well, you've cross-addicted, haven't you?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to do the drugs, but you're going to be obsessed with that.
Exactly. And it worked in my favour.
Yeah.
You know, once again, and you know, I had that identity of not Scott, but the fitness guy. Do you know what I mean? Still wasn't. So 4 years goes past, and
You were doing 8, but you got down to 4.
well, yeah. So when you get sentenced, you do half of your sentence.
Okay.
Yeah, and then the rest of it is on licence.
Okay.
So yeah, I've done the 4 years. I've promised my children's mum the world.
Yeah. And also, you probably believe it because you're clean.
Yeah, and you
And
know,
you're in great shape.
and it was just I really thought, do you know what, that this is going to be the turning point.
Yeah.
But I was spiritually sick still, you know, because I wasn't acceptant that I was an addict still at that stage, despite all the damage that I'd caused, you know, despite the prison that I'd just done because of my addiction. You know, that was all forgotten about very quickly.
Yeah.
It was, I deserve a beer. You know, I've just done 4. You know, let's have a beer. So, you know, I managed to secure myself a job down the road from where I lived, a welding job. But, you know, that voice kept telling me that I deserve a pint, and I gave in to that voice.
How quickly?
A couple of weeks into it, properly, and then the lies started creeping in. I'd pretend that I was working late because I didn't want to tell her that I was drinking, because then all hell would break loose. Then the packet got introduced again, and very, 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 very quickly was I that guy 4 years prior.
Straight back to where you
Straight
started.
back in 4 or 5 grams a day. But the difference this time is that I had a dealer down in the village. I had the dealer dropping it underneath the car wheel, dropping it in my garage. You know, it was so much easier this time. But what wasn't easier, what was the same is funding it. You know, but I still managed to manipulate money. Still managed to, for my family this time, because I'm different now. I've come out of prison. You know, he's got to be different. You know, so I managed to get my family on side again. Pretend it was for rent, pretend it was for this, and they believed me because they loved me. You know, they thought, right, well, surely he's not going to do that again. But I was back in that thing, you know. Failing drug tests at probation. Every single week I was failing drug tests at probation. It got to the stage where, you know, I was using and I knew I was going to fail the drug test at probation. So on the way to probation, I was picking up, sniffing on the way, you know, failing the drug test. I was at that point of unmanageability again, to the point where I was powerless, to the point where I either want to die.
Not even trying to.
No, I just didn't care now.
Yeah.
I either want to die or
How quick
go back
is
to
that
prison.
succession? So you're 2 weeks out of prison, then you're straight, you know, then you've had a pint, then you're back on the bag. You're back then doing a daily user.
Yeah.
So how short is that time frame to go from that to that?
3 months.
3 months.
Back to lying to my employer, saying that I'd hurt my back, so I signed off for work for a week, you know. Everything was just exactly, but worse. It was worse. And yeah, so because of that, I was failing drug tests. Social services then got involved because of probation, obviously deemed me unsafe to be in the house. And because the children's mum is not a user, you know, it was absolutely fine with social, but the implication was that I was not able to stay at the address. So I went to my mum and dad and I said, look, mum, dad, I need somewhere to live, otherwise I'm going to go back to prison. I was putting it on them, you know, making it their issue, making it their problem. If you don't allow me, it's it's because of you I'm going to be going back to prison. They give me some tough love for the first time, and they said, no, we're not going to have you back. I got sent back to prison. I didn't speak to them for 3 months after that because I thought they were the most horriblest parents in the world. I hated them because they didn't allow me back at their house. You know, none of the responsibility lied with me. It's their fault I'm in prison.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, not because I was, you know, couldn't put a drink and drug down again. You know, and once again, that feeling of being recalled back to prison because of drugs was the worst feeling I could have ever felt in my life. You know, that second time around, you know, having to go through all that again. Originally being told I'm going to have to do the rest of my licence. So that was 3.5 years, February 2027. Just because I couldn't put down the drink and drugs, you know. Yeah, tough. But that was, in hindsight, what saved my life.
Yeah.
That was the turning point for me. Yeah. That was when, no, I know it's cliche, I did fall to my knees. I realised that, come on now, something's wrong. I've got to admit that I've got to admit that I've got an addiction here, and I need help because I can't do this all the time. Next time I'm going to die because I don't want to go back to prison. And everything all fell into place pretty well because, you know, the substance misuse worker came to me. I opened up to them and said, listen, I can't do this anymore. And she mentioned a rehab. And, you know, I never really thought about a prison could put you into a rehab. Didn't even cross my mind. So it was just talking at that stage. But yeah, lo and behold, I was accepted into this rehab, Steps to Recovery in West London. But I had to get through parole first. Parole had to deem me fit and safe enough to be able to go out and do that. They did. And on November the 13th last year, I was then released from prison the second time, straight into rehab. And life has just gone like that from that point, you know. I put my life on the line in rehab because I knew I had to.
Yeah.
I opened up about everything.
No stone left unturned.
No stone left unturned, literally, you know. It took me a few weeks to kind of, you know, build and gain trust. But as I was offloading, I felt like I was growing as a person. I felt that growth already. You know, I felt that relief. I felt that weight off my shoulders. And that's why I really kind of, you know, knuckle down on saying to people that want to change, they have to get vulnerable to be able to change. They have to be able to, you know...
Yeah, you can't half-ass it.
No, you can't, because, you know, if you do, there is risk of going back into a relapse. So yeah, rehab for 13 weeks.
That's quite a long rehab stint.
Yeah, it was for 12 weeks, but yeah, I was there for another week, and it's changed my life. Rehab, you know, some people don't get much out of rehab, but I truly believe that you get out what you put in. You know, if you kind of just want to tick the boxes, you know, there's a lot of people that do that, and when you go into rehabs, they tell you the statistics, and there's 12 of us sitting there, and they basically say, look, 3 of you will probably make it through this.
Yeah.
The rest of you will either relapse or end up dead. That is harrowing.
But isn't that statistic based on if you don't do the work when you go out of rehab?
If
you don't go into some type of program or, you know, works.
Or if you don't put the work
in
into
rehab,
rehab,
yeah.
because you do get the people that do that.
Yeah.
You get people that walk into rehab and think that when they walk out, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, and like you're saying about that box ticking thing, I know you get things about people who think, so especially people who have done sort of driving offences and things like that.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, you can go there instead of going to prison. Like some people go to AA.
Yeah.
They tell them if they've done, yeah. So they go and do some AA.
Yeah.
You can spot them a mile off.
Oh, of course you can.
Don't give a shit.
No. It was rehab that introduced me to the rooms. And just like anyone, when you first go to these meetings, you think, you know, you're not sure, are you?
Mine was different because I went in my first day on the back of a 4-day bender, and I would take anything to get me out. I wasn't even reading the fucking steps on the wall. I just sat there crying, you know. I went to a big book meeting for my first ever one.
Yeah.
That was like, whoa. I didn't take any of it in. I just cried. And then there was a newcomer meeting after, and they told me to stay.
Yeah.
And I stayed for that. But at no point did I think this is not for me. That's just my story, you know, because I would have done anything. I didn't know anything else, you know. I didn't know about rehab. It was the first thing I Googled. It was the first thing that came up, and I just went.
You just went,
Yeah. But there was no part of me that didn't want to get sober at that point.
No.
I was done. Done. You
Yeah,
know,
it didn't take me too long to kind of realise that, do you know what, like this is helping me here. You know, when I was listening to the similarities, not the differences.
Yeah, it's massive. Like, no one really wants to think that they're an addict, but then what gets you on board with that and coming to an acceptance of that is when you're watching other people basically tell your story, and you're like, and they're proud of it. They're like, wear it as a badge, because you go into those rooms and you think, I always think everyone's going to be miserable, there's all drug addicts, loads of mental health. There's joy in those rooms, that people have rebirthed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they found themselves. And that's the thing I think about sobriety is, you get rid of this substance, it's fine. But if you don't get emotionally sober, you're not.
No.
You're white-knuckling life.
Dry drunk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, regardless of anything, whether you're an addict or not, it doesn't matter. To get an understanding of yourself is so important.
Definitely. And that is the key. It is. And that's what the steps enables us to do, right? It enabled me to do it. It enabled me to put down on a bit of paper my character defects that I knew I had.
Yeah.
But I was unable to admit it to myself and to others. And it's until then that you kind of admit those things.
And strip your ego back.
Yeah. And,
literally.
you know, what else is there left for you then to be able to help work on yourself? You know, stripping yourself bare, it is. And then you can work, you're putting the foundations in. And then you can kind of build from there.
It's about as well these characters you've played throughout your life. You know, like you when we think about this storyline, you know, it's been this kind of thing of wanting to put the armour on, wanting to put the visor on, wanting to put the gym kit on. You know, there's all these different versions of Scott, and I was the same. And it's about stripping all of those back and figuring out, who am I without any of that stuff? Who am I without the bravado? Who am I without drugs and alcohol?
Exactly.
But not just drugs and alcohol. Who have I ever been?
Yeah.
Because like you get into with drugs and alcohol, you're so good at masking. I mean, I played many different roles until I just was nothing, no personality, nothing left.
Yeah.
And I think you may as well start doing your work now, because you just add an issue on when you introduce drink and drugs. Like, you already have, most of us have mental health problems, and we've got things we don't like about ourselves. But if you try and escape those through the compounds of drugs and alcohol, you just 180, because you're going to go straight back and you've got to figure it all out anyway.
Big time. And, you know, that's what I got from the rooms and what I got from the steps is to establish a daily program that I work on, right? People ask me all the time on TikTok, you know, what got you clean. And you know, I'm a strong believer in kind of suggesting. You know, I can never promote something. You know, but I've come to believe now, you know, since being on the platform and speaking to other addicts in recovery, that as much as the fellowship changed my life, you know, it isn't for everyone.
No, I agree.
And I feel that, you know, we're in 2024 now, and there are other ways and means to get clean and stay clean and live a happy life. And I'm a strong believer in that. But there are things that, you know, that people kind of turn their noses up at that because of, obviously, I'm in the fellowship. But, you know, I think things have changed.
We've both had to deal with that, and we've both spoken about this, because in the fellowship, obviously, there's something called Tradition 10, which is that you don't promote fellowship. But essentially, you and I mean, I know you've taken people to meetings.
Yeah.
I know that if I'd known about NA and CA, you know, as a young person, it's promotion in the best way. So I think no matter what, like if you're doing something different or against the grain, you're always going to get a bit of backlash. But step 3 prayer, right, which I do most nights, step 3 prayer is guide me in my recovery and show me how to live. But if this isn't me being guided to be doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or you, then what are we supposed to be doing?
Exactly. And, you know, I've noticed there is this divide of, you know, an addict in recovery in the rooms and an addict in recovery not in the rooms. There's like this divide, and I don't think there should be. You know, we're all in recovery, whether you've taken the steps or you haven't, or you go to meetings or you haven't. You know, we should all be there to support one another, not, oh, well, you're not going to last long, you haven't done the 12 steps.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't be doing those 12 steps. It's both sides do the same thing. And really, you know, we should be coming together, and that's what I do and yourself does on TikTok. And, you know, I'm not letting no one take that away from me.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So, here, clean and serene today, 500 days yesterday?
500 days yesterday.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
That's a nice number.
It is a nice number.
Nice. How are you feeling nowadays?
Yeah, I feel free.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's a
Peace.
bit cliche. I feel peaceful in my own skin. And, you know, I've not had that ever. I have my up and down days.
You know, sobriety doesn't bring perfection.
No.
But neither does not being sober.
Exactly.
No, if you're not an addict or an addict, life is an ever-moving machine.
Yeah.
Ups and downs.
But I have the tools today to, you know, when I do go through those tough times, I'm able to fast forward the tape, and I'm able to kind of, you know, realise that taking a drink and drug, it's just going to make it a million times worse. I've accepted that I'm an addict today. I've accepted that it's not the drink and the drug, it's the way it alters my mind. Anything can alter my mind, and that's what I latch onto. So I do be careful with things, you know, the gym, sunbeds, you know, those type of little things that change the way I feel. You know, I'm able to kind of identify that, oh, hold on, I'm kind of doing that a bit too much now, you know, before it gets unmanageable. So yeah, I'm very grateful today. I think gratitude is a must in recovery, because when I was in addiction, I was so ungrateful. You know, I thought the world was against me. Yeah, the victim, you know, and that just feeds our addiction.
Yeah.
You know, so even if I wake up and I've got a bit of the ump, you know, I think of 10 things that I'm grateful for. It could be the smallest of things. You know, that I slept on a bed tonight, because some people don't even sleep on beds. They're on the
roof over
streets.
my head.
Yeah.
Ate a meal.
And it kind of guides you through your day. You know, meditation's a big thing for me. Never thought I'd be the one to meditate with my ADHD head, but I do, you know. Connection.
Yeah.
You
big
know,
one.
TikTok has allowed me to do that massively. Because I can give myself to someone now. You know, it enables me to have true friendships today, true relationships. Whereas before, I was unable to show my true self. I was never able to do that. So I never had true relationships.
Yeah.
I always masked it. Every relationship I had, as in friendship, it was acquaintances.
Yeah. And what can I get out of it?
Yeah. Or, you know, using with them. You know, that was all it was. We wouldn't go out, do normal things. No. It was be in each other's kitchen for 3-4 days. It's not a friendship. So, you know, at the ripe old age of 35, I can say that I've got true friendships today. People that actually look out for me, and that I genuinely look out for them. Because I didn't give a fuck about anyone. I didn't. You know, not even my kids. You know.
And they're back in your life now?
they're back in my life gradually. You know, as I've mentioned, me and that mum are no longer together, which has been tough. You know, she's an amazing woman. She's brought up those kids by herself, and I can't thank her enough for that. You know, and she's done an amazing job. My kids are absolutely amazing. You know, I do struggle with the fact of that, you know, I want things, that instant gratification. It's easy to forget that I've not been around for most of their lives.
Yeah.
And when I've been in active addiction. So they're young kids.
Yeah.
It's going to take time for them to kind of, you know, they know I'm their daddy. And, you know, I'm grateful that I can be present for them today. You know, even if it's at the end of the phone or I see them every other Sunday, they're seeing the true me. They're not seeing the dad that's rushing them up to bed so I can do my next line.
You're present.
Present. Do you know what I mean? So...
You nearly got me there.
Yeah.
Nearly.
Oh, but I'm just genuinely happy today. You know, I'm genuinely happy with what I've been able to come through. I feel lucky. I haven't got much, but I'm happy with what I've got, and I never used to be. I always wanted that little bit more, you know.
Well, we compare ourselves all the time.
Yeah,
don't we? Until you become your true, authentic self, you don't require external validation from anyone.
And it just makes you realise how that's not much. No. It's about inside. Yeah. They say it's an inside job, and it's true.
Yeah.
You know, you could be this most amazing person on the outside, but if you're not on the inside, it would eat away at you in the end. And that's what I've really concentrated on this time around. You know, of course I care what I look like externally, who don't? But what's most important to me, you know, it's the inside, because I feel great. You know, my mental health has improved massively. You know, financials has improved massively. Just every aspect of my life, you know. And as much as I'm proud of myself for getting through, you know, what I've got through, you know, I'm very grateful for the people that have been able to help me along the way, and I'll never forget that. And you said it previously, you know, it's a lifelong amends now, you know, and you know,
you're doing just that.
I'm doing just that, you know, and I'm just loving life.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And being a Class A person.
Oh, I'm officially a Class A person.
You are. You've been amazing.
No,
give me a hug.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you. Thank you so much.